Please welcome to the Sports Forum Theater, Ruth Buscombe.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Sports Forum and welcome to this session about Formula One and exactly how AWS, as our global partner in Formula One, is helping us power the data stories and the very sports itself. My name is Ruth Buscombe. I am a strategist with Formula One, and I have been in the sport longer than I care to remember. But Formula One itself is a global sport. At the last count, we had 857 million fans. That's about 1 in 8 people on Earth that watch us go racing 24 times a year. But for those of you that may be not Formula One fans, this is a little bit of what we do. Racing into tomorrow. That's what I wanted to call this session. But in order to think about what Formula One is going to do in the future, we have to take a step back to our past. We've completed 23 of the 24 races of Formula One's 75th season in existence. Formula One started with a singular data point, a stopwatch in a muddy field in Silverstone in 1950. Data has always been at the heart of our sport. And that's because, unlike if you're going to see a Super Bowl or an NBA or a soccer game, we don't be able to see the whole pitch. Formula One exists on a circuit that is often 5 kilometers. Sometimes we're racing through the Ardennes, a muddy field in Silverstone. Sometimes we're racing down the Las Vegas Strip, just like we were last week. And so data really is at the core of everything in Formula One. And as we go through this presentation, it's important for you to remember the scale of the competition in which we work in Formula One, and indeed how the storytelling needs to represent those fine margins. The 2024 season, which we now have all the data for, and as an engineer, I love a complete data set. On average, the difference between first and last of the 20 drivers was 1.3%. 1.3% is all that split world champion from the person that came deadpan last. To put that into context, if I decided to start running, go for Olympic gold, say, if I was 1.3% slower than Usain Bolt, I would currently be standing here with 2 gold medals and 2 silver medals around my neck, and I'll have run about 8.70 seconds. In Formula One, if you perform 1.3% off of the world's best, you are deadpan last. Marginal gains. Formula One is also an efficiency formula. Just like many other areas, many other sports, we were hit by the financial crisis. It used to be a free-for-all. You could spend what you want, you could do what you want. Now we have to operate under a cost cap as a Formula One team. So it's all about doing more with less. And it's all about creating and finding those margins from every single member of the team, from the drivers to the engineers. And that is the key to what we do. And we now need to tell that data story 24 times a year around the world to be able to understand exactly why one person is ahead and one person is behind, and the nuance in the prediction. It's a big old challenge, which is why when Formula One was bought in 2017 by Liberty, they realized that they had a gap, they had an issue, they need to be able to tell these stories, and which is where the partnership from AWS began. Now, AWS started working with Formula One back in 2018. I became a global partner for the 2019 season because they realized we needed a little bit more help, and it was renewed in November 2022. Now, AWS does work with many sports, and I am competitive, including NFL, PGA Tour, Bundesliga. The unique thing about Formula One is that data really is at the heart of their sport. There's three key pillars to what the partnership between AWS and F1 is. One, data-driven racing intelligence and innovation. How can we, as a sport, tell the stories better? How can we extract the data? And I'm going to show you exactly what we do in a minute. Fan engagement. Formula One has changed from a sport before it was bought by Liberty in 2017. It was previously owned by a man named Bernie Ecclestone. From a sport where our average fan was a 52-year-old white male from Coventry. If you haven't been, you're not missing out. We had a very small demographic and an aging demographic every year that was dwindling. Now, we want Formula One to still be a place for the, I guess he'll be 62-year-old now, in Coventry. But we also want it to be a space for everybody else. We want to be a four-quadrant sport, and that's not just driven by quality, that is driven by the fact that if we can sell 4 tickets to mum, dad, son, and daughter, we do better as a sport. We grow the pie, and the prize money for all the teams gets grown too. As of this year, 1 in 8 people on Earth watch Formula One, which means about 1 in 16 people on Earth have been heartbroken by Scuderia Ferrari in the last calendar year. It also means that we now have a demographic we need to serve better. 43% of our fans are now under 35, 41% are female, and we have almost 63% of our fans are new since 2017, which means we need to be able to provide the stories that not only cater to people that have been watching it for 35 years, we need to be able to cater it for somebody that it's their first race. And the most important people for us are the 7 in 8 people on Earth that are currently not watching Formula One. So we need to be able to get them enticed and attracted to our sport too. Finally, technical transformation. There's very few sporting global partners that can say they actually influence the shape of the sport. There's fewer partners that can say that they helped improve overtaking by 30%. And we're going to go into exactly how AWS helped Formula One do that in a little bit. Here is the ecosystem of all the different ways in which Formula One and AWS work. We're going to go into detail a little bit more about all of the ways in which this has happened. Everything from a CFD project to help improve the racing in Formula One, improving performance stats, being able to create nuances to understand the difference in statistics. Formula One has been able to create real-time insights, and Formula One has been able to expand the partnership and the story. But what does this really mean? And how on earth do we get data from a Formula One car into being an insight on screen? And what even is an insight? So let me take you through the data journey of a Formula One car. Now, Formula One represents one of the most data-intensive sports environments in the world. Again, I'm an unreliable narrator and I'm biased, but I think it's the best. Every Formula One car generates more than 1.1 million data points per second during a race. Now, during a typical race weekend, we, as Formula One, responsible for the projection of all of this data, process more than 5 billion data points across all of our 20 cars. It's going to go up next year because we've suddenly got 22. That is roughly equivalent to streaming 1,600 Netflix movies simultaneously. So while all of this is being captured, the massive scale of the data enables us to deliver the insights to fans and transforms the storytelling. Because, again, when 1.1 million data points are coming off of a car and you've got 6 billion data points, how many of them are actually relevant to what's going on screen and how many are relevant to the story? It's not our fans' responsibility to be able to work out and sift through that data. It's ours. Just like it's the challenge every Formula One team has against each other to find which of those data points are the ones that's going to give them the edge. Now, here are some examples of ways in which we use that data to be captured. So every Formula One car has around 300 sensors on it in a race, of which the most important and usually the loudest is still the Formula One driver. But we have 299 other data channels we do have to listen to. We have real-time monitoring of the car, everything from the tire temperatures, fuel consumption, engine performance data, a car recently that partner was not AWS did get disqualified, McLaren, because they didn't actually monitor important data, which was the ride height. So does come down to championships. Environmental factors make a big difference. If you can predict better than your competitor whether or not it's going to start to rain, that is where championships are won and lost. In the Brazilian Grand Prix last year, 2 teams, Red Bull and Alpine, did a better job predicting the weather forecast than the other 8 teams. Alpine, they came from P9 in the championship to P6, gaining 35 points, which represents multi-million pounds worth of prize money. It also cleared up the French Civil War between Pierre and Ocon. They hate each other. They dated the same girl at school. So if you never thought data-driven stories could make a difference, not only does it enable you to win, it enables you to keep the peace. Now, Formula One have given me the example of this to be able to share with you today. So thank you, Formula One. Here is an example of a real-time insight. This is exactly the way us as strategists and as engineers communicate to our driver about Formula One. And I'm going to give you all a little lesson, if you don't already know about it, about how we read the data. Now, this is the lap comparison between pole and P2 in last year's Formula One Grand Prix here in Las Vegas. And you'll see that it was George Russell on pole, Carlos Sainz P2, and less than a tenth, 9/900ths, separated those 2 drivers. And that's a cool fact in and of itself. But when we go into the data, we can really understand where and why one car is faster. Now, broadly speaking, there's 4 different ways a Formula One car can be faster or slower. So, first off, on the straights, if you build a better power unit, so more power, or you have a skinnier, more efficient rear wing, you'll be faster on the straights. You'll notice there's no Max Verstappen here because last year their rear wing was way too big, and so it was way too draggy on the straights. So you end up with things like that. So that's the only 2 things you can do. As a driver, you can't do anything but complain and move teams about that. That is beyond your thing. Secondly, we can compare across teammates. If we have the same machinery and one driver is faster in a certain corner or slower in a certain corner, that tells us between the team that we as an absolute package can do better. We can put the blame on the drivers and the race engineer, and we can do it. We have statistics now based on where drivers are stronger or weaker. We go into the final race of the 2025 Formula One season for the first 3-way shootout we've had for world champion in the last 15 years. And 2 of those drivers are driving the same car, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. 12 points is all that separates them. And Lando Norris has been consistently faster in the high-speed corners. Lando's been faster in the low-speed corners. Oscar's been faster in the high-speed corners. We're able to see that data in real time, see where it evolves, see where the driver is the best. Then we have the car. The car itself makes a huge difference. The more downforce you have, typically the faster you are in the corners, and the more downforce you put on a car, the faster you are in corners and that go around a Formula One car. We tend to split them into 3 different speed ranges, and different cars are better in those speed ranges. And finally, and my favorite one, is when you see time at the end of the track being lost, we blame the tire engineer, because that means that the tires ran out of juice before the end of the lap. So, now you're all experts. We can see that the reason why Carlos Sainz wasn't in pole is because he made a mistake costing him 0.229 in the first 2 corners of the racetrack. Turn 3, turn 4, where after that, no matter what happened, you can see the delta time. Speed trace, up is fast, down is slow. And we can see that no matter what he did, even though he had a faster car, he was faster on the straights, he was faster in the corner. It was that one tiny driver error that cost him the pole position and ultimately the win around this track. And that's the power of data stories. So how do we get that data? How are we able to generate these kind of insights as Formula One? So I'm going to show you exactly how we as Formula One do it. So on track, the car is driving around anywhere from Melbourne to Las Vegas Grand Prix or Abu Dhabi later this week. And the car itself is beaming out information and beaming out data. There's 1.1 million data points. They run past a series of wire loops. And then that data is beamed to what we like to call the ETC, the Event Technical Center. If you haven't spotted it, next time you watch a Formula One race, It's that we've got a big AWS logo on the top. We nailed the branding. So it's a big tent that's got an AWS logo. Now, this is where the Formula One heartbeat is as the track. This is the only infrastructure that we now kart around the world, thanks to our friends at AWS. Just like everybody else, we were shut down by the pandemic, and we were the first global sport back on in 3 months and 20 days. And the reason why we did that was because we were able to accelerate a program to be able to take 95% of our kilos of our production away from being carted around the world, so the only thing we take is this. Now, the data is then beamed from the ETC all the way to a magical place called Biggin Hill. Coventry, Biggin Hill, we pick all the best places. And so whilst the weather is poor, the data is great. And that the MTC is where all of the rest of our race operations go for. Now, from the MTC in the UK, it is then beamed up to our friends at AWS. And scalability is very important. We have 6 billion data points across a race, but then we have absolutely nothing for the next 5 days. So it's very important as we go through, not only do we have a fast connection, which we do via 2 dedicated direct connect lines, and we're moving every single race, every single season into making that faster. It's something down to 250 milliseconds latency from Melbourne all the way back to the UK in Biggin Hill, which is our longest journey of the year until we find a way of monetizing racing on the moon, which I'm sure we will. And from there, it is going to our wonderful train models. Now, we have 75 years worth of data. And Amazon SageMaker is trained on not only that 75 years worth of data, but data that we've collected throughout that race weekend itself, and indeed throughout that session itself. By lap 7, we were able to use data that we've collected on lap 5 to generate these insights, or even from 1 or 2 seconds beforehand. Everything is stored on our simple storage solution, and we're able to use Amazon Lambda that spins up into action a mere 400 milliseconds, or even 100 milliseconds if we're racing in Europe, after the data point has left the Formula One car. So that data is live streamed, and we're able to actually generate these insights. We're able to understand this event-driven architecture, and we're able to extract the key information, the key insights that are the difference between getting ahead and getting behind, and telling the story and missing the point entirely. Amazon DynamoDB is able to store it, and then we go through CloudWatch that's making sure everything is working absolutely fine. And then finally, after that journey that seems like a long time, but is actually done in less than a second, the insight is beamed back to the broadcast via the ETC back at track, and it is available on the international world feed. That entire process happens every single time in less than a second, often much shorter than that. But what is an F1 Insight? Well, it's a widget that pops up on screen. We have up to 20 of them. Back in 2018, we only had 3. And every single time you see one, it's telling a story. It's telling a story about how close a Formula One car gets to a wall to a matter of millimeters. It's telling a story about performance, whether somebody is dominant in one area of the track. It's telling a story about what is going on, a predictive day. We're now going to show you a short video that was played in the Super Bowl because we love to take somebody else's time. And I'd like to see how many insights you can spot.
AWS powers F1 Insights to bring fans closer to the race, closer to the raw speed, closer to edge-of-the-seat decisions. Get closer to F1 with real-time data and insights powered by AWS.
Quite a few. So we actually have 24 current insights that pop up on screen, and these fall into 3 main areas. Now, the first, and obviously the most important, as the unreliable narrator, former head of strategy that I am, is race strategy. Very important if you want to win a championship. Again, McLaren, cloud partner, didn't get that one right, did they? And it's about understanding what's going on. So we've got both strategy options that are live during the race, battle forecasts, being able to say, don't go for a cup of tea or for an espresso because Lewis Hamilton's just about to attack the driver in front of him in 3 laps' time, being able to predict that. Now, pit strategy battle, I've got a great way of showing you this before, which is exactly what happens when we go to a Formula One race stop, when we're racing around the pit, predicting what is going on and predicting elements like an undercut that I'll go into later. Competitor analysis, which is our Formula One term for spying on people when they've done a better job than us. Usually it's Adrian Newey, he's built a better car. Can you tell I'm bitter that I didn't win the championship in 2012? But it's about understanding where and why a car is fast and slow. Because there's things we can do to fix it, and there's things that we can't. And as all good engineers know, it's important to know which one and which situation we're in. Is it the driver that needs to do a better way? Do we need to complain to the tyre engineer? It's always the tyre engineer. Do we need to add more downforce in a certain area of speed, or do we need to add more power? Understanding where we're losing and gaining time on track is very important. But also is understanding when we're in the pits. If you do get a chance, go to the Formula One pit stop. But a Formula One pit stop is a mastery of engineering and performance meeting with high-performance individuals. 22 people are involved in a Formula One pit stop, of which only one of them is a Formula One driver. And the difference between winning a race or losing a race can often come down to the hundredths of seconds. Historically, understanding how fast a pit stop was, we'd only have the information, either somebody with a stopwatch or the data available after a race. Now that insight, not only from teams, but from a broadcast perspective, is available within that 1 second period. We can tell you exactly where and when a lap time is lost or gained. We're able to understand how the world record was set in Qatar in 2023 at 100% humidity, and we can tell you exactly what happened, whether it was at the entrance to the pit lane or the exit of the pit lane. Finally, car performance, understanding where the ranking is, building the story, telling the show. And the show itself is very important. Now, Track Pulse has been a tool that you won't see on screen, but you'll see the result of it every single time you turn on a Formula One show. Track Pulse is our key. During a race, this is what the producers are actually seeing and making decisions on. As a strategist, I'm using this to be able to help our race direction, help our feed, tell our pilot that we need to go in a helicopter around to turn 4. You can see from here, and we can't show you all the data because they won't let me, but you can see that Albon's position is likely to change. He's catching Valtteri, and there's more information coming in. And the producers are actually using these live updates, again, produced once every second, to determine which elements to highlight for viewers and the right information to bring the story to life, while predicting what's around the corner to anticipate and accelerate all of that race storytelling. This feeds into what the commentary teams all around the world, whether you're watching in Germany or the States or the other side of the world, feeds in. And Track Pulse, as we call it, has also helped to revolutionize storytelling in terms of really understanding the key differentiators in the car performance. Is it that top speed? Is it the power? Is it the corners? It's instant detection of any key moment that is going on in the race. And it's the first time Formula One has ever been able to have real-time energy mapping. And not only has this been important up to now, as we go into the 2026 season, we have the biggest regulation change in 30 years. And there is not one person on Earth right now that knows which will be the most important KPI within the rule set that will define which is the fastest car. Because if they did, Max Verstappen would go and drive for them. But he didn't know. And neither does them. So if you listen to the whispers in the paddock, you would say that maybe Mercedes will build the best power unit. They'll be the fastest on the straights. And maybe that will be true. But the reality is there's 4 different ways in which Formula One cars might be able to get the edge, or a combination of all 4. There's power, but 50% of energy from next year is going to be from hybrid. It's going to be from electric sources. Fuel is 100% sustainable for the first time in our 76-year history. And there's all sorts of fun that could be happening with fuel. Just ask Ferrari in 2019. And then finally, the chassis itself. Adrian Newey's moved from Red Bull, where he's been for the last many a season, bringing many a championship, to Aston Martin. And actually being able to tell the story makes a big difference. We've seen a 47% increase in viewer understanding, and real-time engagement is happening across 200 plus markets. This is really helping us in terms of the broadcast storytelling, and these insights allow the fans to understand what's going on. By leveraging the powerhouse of AWS and really putting the customer first, our customers within Formula One, we're able to process and visualize race data faster than we ever before, more accurately than we've ever before, and creating new value from data streams we would never be able to even access before. If you watch F1 TV Pro and you hate Max Verstappen and you watch Lando, we're able to make sure we're not selling you a ticket to the Max Verstappen grandstand. It's important about that, and it's important to meet your customer where they are and give them the information that they need. Technology and this platform opens new opportunities for fan engagement from everything from a TikTok trend of Lewis Hamilton in a new fit, probably looking a little bit like me right now, to deep understanding and being able to compare a cornering between Ayrton Senna and Max Verstappen around the Suzuka 130R. Storytelling and racing and the love of that is at the heart of what we do, blending the history, the present, and the future into making sure that whoever joins Formula One, whether they're a Gen Zer that calls me a boomer, and I should get off TikTok, or whether they're someone that's been watching Formula One for 50 years, we're able to give them the correct stories. Now, I mentioned an undercut, and as any good strategist goes, I should really teach you some race strategy in case you're not aware of it. Going into the final race of the season in Formula One, you can impress your friends if you're not already an expert in Formula One race strategy. Now, by regulation, if the race is dry, which it should be in Abu Dhabi, bearing in mind, I was told it was supposed to be dry in Las Vegas last week, and I got rained on, so everything comes with a caveat. Formula One cars are required by regulation to change tyres at least once in a dry race. Now, the timing of that pit stop can have a significant bearing on the outcome of the race. Please see the Qatar Grand Prix for an example of when you don't change your tyres at the right time, how you can lose the race. Now, during the pit windows, where you've got a soft, a medium, or a hard tyre, think about them like a Goldilocks. Soft is usually fast, but degrades very quickly. The hard is slower, but degrades slower, and the medium is in the middle, or at least they should be if Pirelli's done their job correctly. Now, it's quite hard for fans to appreciate what's going on with the racing, especially new fans, and how the battles will evolve. We built an ML-driven model to help tell those stories, and we're going to unpack that today. But before we do that, let's talk about the definition of an undercut. Now, here's a basic animation showing two cars on track. Let's call them a Ferrari and a Mercedes. The Mercedes is struggling to make an overtake on track. So the team strategist, the QB, makes the call to perform a pit stop ahead of their opponent on front. Now, with its new tyres for that one lap, the Mercedes has a significant pace advantage. So they're doing one lap, 20 seconds down the road on faster, new tyres, trying to jump the car in front that stayed out on older tyres. Now, this is often in the order of 2 to 3 seconds. It depends on where you box if you come out on free air, and it depends on whether or not the tyres are fast straight out the box or they have a warm-up curve. That's up to the strategist to predict and to get right. And it's also up to us in Formula One to show this prediction, to show the live suspense. Because instead of seeing two cars racing on track, suddenly it's boring. We have one car there and one car 20 seconds down the road, except we don't. There's a live race going on. And our job is to show exactly how that is going. Is the undercut attempt working? Have they had a clean pit stop, a fast enough pit stop? Are they able to make up time on the outlap? And what is that virtual gap looking like so that we can predict, not only for us to make sure we get the shot, but for the fan at home, they're watched, they're locked in, and they understand exactly what's going on. So this is an undercut attempt. I'm going to show you exactly what it is. And when you're watching this, look at the insight as it pops up on screen. Two things I want you to look at. Look at the percentage chance, look at how fast it's recalculating. And then I also want you to spot the point at which we take it away, and I'll explain why later.
Wherever you look, there is action here in Bahrain tonight.
That DRS is very powerful up to turn 4, isn't it? But it has put a lot of cars side by side, as well as overtaking. And we'll have a look at Hamilton's sector times, because I'm pretty sure that when Ferrari pit Vettel to cover that, maybe they'll try and run him a bit longer, but it's going to play. They had to cover off Leclerc and Hamilton, and it's left Vettel exposed. Vettel is coming in.
So 77% chance of an overtake. Hamilton on Vettel, 81% now, because Hamilton's going faster.
K1 to gain more. Push now, racing two cars, push now.
So this is the undercut. This is Hamilton going faster on that new set of tyres than Vettel's able to because he's on an older set of tyres. Hamilton's just coming round the final turn as the Ferrari pit crew execute a very nice pit stop indeed. Medium compound tyres going on to Sebastian Vettel's Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton goes past our commentary box at a rate of knots. Vettel at 80 kilometres an hour. Hamilton has got the jump on Sebastian Vettel by performing the undercut, and it's Hamilton now ahead of the Ferrari.
Even commentators like Crofty can get the overcut and the undercut confused. But you saw there, that was a live prediction. It was building the anticipation. It was telling the story. But the moment that Sebastian Vettel reacts, so he comes in one lap later, they see that they're about to get undercut and they react. We take the graphic away. Why do we do that? 3 reasons. 1, we don't know how the pit stop is going to go. At that point, our ability to predict goes into a different series of things. 2, we want to build the suspense. We've captured the audience. At that point, you are locked in and you are loaded. And we want you to be able to see the story unfold, regardless of what actually you might think, and being able to have that moment where you have the 2 cars racing as they go back on track. Is one of the many ways in which storytelling, showing the data stories behind, really does keep our audience engaged. Now, another way, and one of my favorite ones, is how close a Formula One car gets to the wall. Now, you want to get as close to a wall as possible in Formula One because you are making a corner more into a straight, you can carry more speed. It is very important that number is not a negative number. Otherwise, it's very expensive. It's about £1.5 million every crash, and we have a cost cap. And obviously, you're slower because you're in the wall. Now, historically, Formula One teams would do this, and in the age of the internet and, like I say, AI, it's very important that you fact check it. I was the person that did this, so I'm telling you it's true. We used to look at video overlays of Formula One cars when they get close to the wall, and we would qualitatively and manually and very NVA feedback to our drivers, whether in a practice session they were too close to the wall, taking too much risk, risking wrecking, or they weren't close enough, and actually they were leaving too much on the table. Formula One drivers have to practice. They're good, but they do have to practice. So the more times they have that feedback loop of, you are losing too much time relative to the competitors that we need to beat, you need to take more risk or more reward, it improves the understanding for the Formula One teams. Historically, Formula One teams did this very slow. The information would be provided 3 data points maximum after each practice session, after a session, and the driver would have to readjust. Now, remember that 1 second. We're able to not only provide this information as Formula One, but Formula One teams are doing the exact same analysis. So let me show you exactly how close to a Formula One wall you need to be. One centimeter. So how close to the wall inside? It measures the distance between the car and the wall and the closest point on each lap. We're able to put cameras around the corners that are important. That's turn 1 in Monaco. And we use precision telemetry trained with ML models to calculate the distance in very close to real time, less than 1 second. We visualize that data. We use color-coded graphics. We use cool things like super close to the wall. But the reality of this is we're able to actually tell the stories. We're able to tell you that Max Verstappen is 1.2 centimeters close to the wall 1 second after it's happened, and teams are using this exact same data to get the edge. The first team that adopted this by using high-speed cameras was actually the Mercedes team, and it was when they were winning absolutely everything a few years ago. And the reason why they started doing this is because it's about marginal gains. It's about finding a way of doing it. If you are suddenly getting 100 data points every single lap versus somebody that is getting 3 data points a weekend, the feedback loop means you need to adjust and move forward. And when we talk about feedback loops, there's nothing that's more important than how everything changes year on year. Now, this is the lap comparison from this year's Las Vegas Grand Prix in free practice 2. Qualifying itself was wet, so it was very wiggly. But I'm going to show you exactly how Formula One, you can see the time it is. Now, some of you probably are experts by now, so you don't even need me anymore. But if we look at the delta trace below, you can see that actually, in terms of the pole position, it was won and lost in very different parts of the racetrack itself. Lando Norris on pole, just barely 300ths faster than Kimi Antonelli. And the fascinating thing about this is where the cars were faster and slower. The McLaren, they had quite a chunky rear wing, and you can see that on the long straight of the Las Vegas Grand Prix, that Mercedes was actually back on pole. And if it wasn't for the actual brilliant cornering by Lando Norris in the final corner, both from driver and from car, it would have been Kimi Antonelli on pole. And being able to tell those data stories live helps us understand to the audience and also set the scene for the race the next day, that McLaren, whilst it's fast in a straight line, has a real problem with the fact that it could get overtaken in the race. And that is really what we want to do. We want to innovate and fan experience and make sure that we have a key amount of impact across the whole point. There's so many different ways in which we're doing 24. Obviously, we don't want to go into all of them today because some of you need to get to dinner. But it's everything from enhancing the race understanding itself, it's real-time strategy insights, and it's powering AWS technology. You know, Formula One itself has actually been adopted and changed. And I mentioned that AWS helped Formula One improve overtaking, and that might seem like a strange sentence. But through AWS technology, we've enabled cars to race 65% closer than before, resulting in a 68% increase in overtaking opportunities and a 30% increase in actual overtakes on track. It's not just about technology, it's about transforming the fan experience. So every overtake strategy call, we want to be able to capture that. And the result is a revolution in motorsport where data, whilst it's at the heart of everything teams do, it's also at the heart of our communication. Now, it does include the car. Back in 2022, AWS was enlisted by Formula One to help in terms of the actual development of the Formula One car. Every Formula One car, as a byproduct of the downforce that makes you go faster in the corners, creates an aerodynamic wake. Now, that aerodynamic wake itself is dirty air. This is a visualization of what the plume looks like. And that, whilst it's just a byproduct, is difficult to sit in. If you look at nowadays, when we look at the modern day Formula One car, AWS was able to do a 2-car simulation. Now, this is the old regulations themselves, and you can see that second car is sitting in that dirty wake. They're losing downforce, which is why it was so difficult to overtake. The new car design, by forcing that wake up, by creating a series of regulations that the engineers needed to adhere to, makes that turbulent wake cleaner and more vertical, reducing the impact on the following car, which encourages closer racing and battling, resulting in more overtakes and position changes. And the simulations done by AWS that were able to carve out the regulations that the Formula One teams then followed increased overtaking significantly. If you look at the improvement there, it's so impressive. So how on earth did we do it? So it would have taken 371 years on a decent MacBook Pro and 440 hours on premises down to 6. They used this to be able to design the Formula One team. And for the first time in Formula One's history, they didn't have to ask the teams to do the simulations for them, because it's a bit like asking turkeys if they prefer Thanksgiving, Christmas, or Easter. We tend to be quite self-interested. And that in and of itself created 30% more overtakes since 2022. And to celebrate that, every year, Formula One, AWS, has a title race. And last year, we had the title race was the Montreal Grand Prix. Formula One trophies are iconic. If you've watched Formula One, you'll know just how special some of them are. The drivers absolutely love them when they're special ones. So the Silverstone one, big fave. It's gold, it's big, you can't actually take it home. The Dutch Grand Prix one is great, but they do break if you're Lando Norris, you try and smash them. And standing on the steps of the F1 podium, you know, it's not just their dream. Lifting the trophy in the air is a triumph, decades of hard work. And so when you're the title partner, you get to design your own trophy, and AWS, being AWS, didn't want to do something too basic. So actually, AWS did this. The world's first trophy in any sport, and obviously the first trophy in Formula One, that was designed and inspired by AI. Using Amazon Bedrock and Amazon Titan Image, we were able to create a series of prompts that described what a Formula One trophy would be done if it is inspired by that aerodynamic wake. The irony of which is that we created one of the most beautiful trophies in the world, which was won by a driver called Max Verstappen, who doesn't have the same cloud partner as us. But I did tell him on the day when he said that it was really pretty and he was going to put it on one of the higher shelves, that it was designed by AWS, so he should spin it round if he didn't want to get in trouble with his boss. But he did love it, and he, in fact, himself, he loves the overtaking. And the trophy itself is absolutely beautiful. Do go look it up. So StatBot is another way in which Formula One is able to do during generative AI to enhance the broadcast. Commentators, we deliver a lot of insights. We're educating 857 million people on a go. And actually, not everyone can remember every single one of the facts. So AWS and F1 developed an agentic tool that commentators can ask live during a race to understand statistics that are coming through, which helps us in terms of making sure we have high accuracy, we don't get caught out on it, but also by being able to bring in information in live and real time. Again, he is my friend, so I don't have to always be mean to him. But one of my favorite examples of this was in the Brazilian Grand Prix last year, where Max Verstappen went from P17 to P1, and his race engineer, GP, said to him, after reading the AWS-generated stat on the screen, "Did you know, mate, it's only 5 times in the 1,157 Grand Prix that anyone's ever won from P17 before." Obviously, he wasn't able to do that from his cloud partner, but we're happy to help. We're a Formula One provider. We like everybody here. But when you see here, you can see the power that this has, not just in terms of the storytelling, but also in terms of what we're able to do. Root cause analysis is a really important one. Now, Formula One racing isn't just about speed on the track and storytelling, but also about the speed of decision-making that's behind the scenes. And F1 is leveraging the AI to revolutionize race day operations. So we always get critical issues. It could be a beaver in Montreal. It could be somebody backing into a wire when we're at a street track. And the complexity of that demands time, and every second counts. So F1 implemented a cutting-edge solution using Amazon Bedrock, agents, knowledge bases, and created an AI-powered virtual technical assistant that integrates seamlessly with F1's existing knowledge base, basically making so that we can keep the broadcast going no matter what happens. And actually, it's improved the time in which we've diagnosed issues 86%. The reason why you don't know about this is because it does its job, and because you get to watch Formula One without anything going wrong. But we like this a lot because it makes us a lot less stressed. Another thing we like in Formula One is fun. And Formula One drivers don't like media. And remember this, okay? Because in order to make something that's fun enough for a Formula One driver to find entertaining, it's got to be really fun. Now, on the launch of Amazon Nova, we created this for this year's title race for Imola Grand Prix. I'm not going to say the full name because I'll get it wrong. It's got like 50 words in it. And we've basically had this generative AI-powered real-time racetrack where you can design your own racetrack. It will calculate what the optimal strategy will be. You can put it anywhere in the world. I put mine in Bora Bora, hint, hint, Stefano Domenicali. I manifested Vegas. I'm manifesting Bora Bora. And then using Amazon Nova, it even makes an old school poster. So we put it to the 2 harshest critics in the entire world, Lewis and Charles.
Okay, if you're going to create your own track using Amazon Web Services, take it away, yeah?
All right. So what's your favorite corner on the whole calendar, Lewis?
Ones that like just have you on the edge of the seat.
So you like fast corners?
Yeah.
The Interstellar Highway. Have you seen it's giving names?
I call the track Illusion.
A pretty cool name in such a short amount of time. That's quite cool. If you go, yeah. And it gives you the strategy of the track on your track, like the best strategy on a 50 etc. lap. Heartland Speedway circuit. Oh, -2 degrees. Good luck putting the Pirelli into temperature. Was really cool. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's quite impressive.
Awesome.
What AI can do today.
Really cool. Go to realtimeracetrack.com, have a go yourself. It's quite fun. In fact, we couldn't get them off it. We were in the Imola Grand Prix, and we then used this, connected up to an actual simulator where we also had Sonic speaking in as a race engineer, and none of the guests got to go because we couldn't get them off it because they were having such fun. But go there, design, because Formula One is supposed to be about data, but it's all supposed to be about fun and imagining the future and also manifesting a Bora Bora Grand Prix. So that ends the part of this session where we're going into the ways in which Formula One is working with AWS. And I hope you've learned a little bit more about behind the scenes, behind the curtains, how AWS and Formula One are working together. And for the final few minutes, I want to take you through a real-world example, and do stick around afterwards because we're actually going to go to the Grand Prix. Now, one of my roles within AWS as the global ambassador and technical advisor is I get to talk to customers, I get to talk to guests at the Grand Prix, and I get to tee them up to the race using the insights themselves, putting my money where my mouth is. So this is exactly what I said to everybody last weekend. So this is the Las Vegas Grand Prix that just happened a week ago, but we're going to imagine it's just about to happen. So this is exactly the experience that you'll get coming to a Formula One race with AWS. Now, Formula One circuits, this one looks like Spider Pig. They all have different characteristics. And across the season, some of them have different demands. Here we've got some rankings, and actually you'll see that the highest ranking here is track evolution. Now, that is because just like Monaco, where how good the party is defines how bad the track is, we're in Las Vegas, baby. So actually the track itself evolves across a race weekend a lot. What do I mean by evolves? I mean the rubber is physically laid down. It's a street track, gets opened up to the public, and then we go back to racing the next day. So every single lap, the track is changing a lot. We've also got one of the highest downforce demands of the entire year, one of the most tricky races to get right because you're effectively ice skating around this thing. Because there's so many long straights, we go down the whole iconic strip, you have the skinniest rear wing you can, but then that means you're holding on in the corners themselves. Now, in Formula One, what we do is we try to predict the future. This is the prediction of last year's Grand Prix, right? So we have the grid, we have a prediction based on the tires. What's the fastest way from A to B? This is just one example of the millions of seeds of predictive analysis that goes on ahead of a race weekend. And it looks pretty boring, doesn't it? Medium, hard, the same guy that's on pole wins. But the reality is the race actually ended up looking like that. Because actually what happened was the tires grained, which means they physically bits of them started falling off. And what moved from being a one-stop, where it was fastest to get from the start to the finish by just paying one 20-second penalty and changing tires once, the degradation of the tires was such that the trade-off moved. Going into a two-stop was the fastest way. And you see the drivers that were able to do that faster and react faster to that did well. And the teams like Alfa Romeo's stake at the time, obviously I wasn't there to tell them not to do it, that tried to make a one-stop work didn't work. This is another way of looking at the stints where we can see the Las Vegas pit stops. And we can see the majority of the teams went for a two-stop strategy, starting on the medium tire and changing their tires twice before they headed off to the ring. Now, moving on to this year, this is the state of the Constructors' Championship ahead of the Las Vegas Grand Prix. And as you can see, McLaren have won the Constructors' Championship title already. But the difference is between second and fourth, and the entire midfield battle represents millions and millions of pounds. We mentioned before that actually just one chaotic race, the Brazilian Grand Prix, was enough to change the entire dramatic nature of it. And ahead of the Las Vegas Grand Prix, the Drivers' Championship was down to 3 drivers that could still win it. We have Lando Norris, we have Oscar Piastri, and we have Max Verstappen still in the race. At the end of the summer shutdown break in August, Max was 104 points behind championship leader Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri that were separated by 12 points, which represented the closest battle we had after a shutdown since the infamous 2021. I can't talk about it, it's too late in the day, I can't get into it. But yeah, Google it if you want to know, I can't go into it. But this is what the grid looked like ahead of the race. And Formula One teams, the nuances of the order in which we are change it. So if you stick around to watch the race, we've got Lando Norris on pole, we have Max Verstappen in P2. It was a wet qualifying. But those are the first 2 people that are trying to race. And we have Oscar Piastri in P5. Now, you'll spot that there's a young man named Carlos Sainz in P3 in a car that really shouldn't be there. He's in a Williams car. He did an absolutely fantastic job. Now, Formula One teams, with the simulations, we need to decide what compound to start on. Now, this is always a bit of a trade-off, right? Because we can start on the soft tyre, we can have a fabulous launch off the line, but then if it degrades too early and it means that we have to add an extra stop, we're in trouble. Flip side of it, if we pick a hard tyre, we might be in a fantastic position in terms of being able to extend, being able to maybe skip a stop, being able to take a safety car later in the race, but we lose off the launch. And the simulations we do help us quantify that numerically. So ahead of the race, we're able to simulate from the data that we collected the day before that the difference between a soft, a medium, and a hard into the launch was 2.23 meters, 4.72, and actually having this information helps us understand. Now, as a strategist, I'll be able to tell you that 4.72 is very bad. You don't want that. That is more than half a car width, which means you're definitely going to lose a position by turn one alone. Now, we've got 14 of them to get through. Not quite. We don't want to go on that one. So now it's the difference between the soft and the medium tyre, and this is where it gets tough, because the soft is giving me a nice launch. It's giving me kind of a 50-50 position to make a position into turn one. And then remember, there's 14 corners as this goes on. And even though it's not linear, there's a significant gain in lap one. But by starting on the soft tyre, I close the window to being able to make a one-stop work. And this is the kind of analysis Formula One teams do. By starting on the medium tyre, I have significant more information and more flexibility to be able to pivot my strategy. If the same thing happens as it did in the previous year's race, where I started on a medium thinking it was a one-stop and I was able to convert to a two-stop. If I'd started on a soft, I barely would have done 3 or 4 laps. And so going into the race, this is again what it looked like for us. With the information we had, the very limited running we had, 5 laps of data, we're able to predict that we think it should be a one-stop race, and we think that this is what the most likely situation is going to happen. But as with ever, data, changing, insights, everything changes. If you stick around, you'll be able to see all the way that we're able to calculate information during the race. We're able to show all these insights in real time. We like to put our money where our mouth is in Formula One, so you can count to see how many insights pop up, but there are a lot, and this is a spicy race. So I'm going to give you a little tee up right now.
From Las Vegas, this is Formula One.
Welcome to Las Vegas.
Racing to turn number 1, and they open the door for Charles Leclerc.
The crowd love it.
It's time for the main event under the bright lights.
This is the Las Vegas Grand Prix.
George Russell wins the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Max Verstappen is a 4-time world champion.
Oh my God, what a season.
That was last year's race. If you want to watch this year's race, stick around after the Q&A. We'll be playing it straight ahead. My name is Ruth Buscombe. It's been a pleasure chatting to all of you today.